I can't believe that I'm going to say this. I cannot believe that I'm going to come on the Oregon Football Report and me, Will Ortner, the host of this fine show, this fine program, and tell you that I think the Oregon Ducks got better today. I cannot believe that I'm going to come on this show and I am going to convince you, the viewer, I'm going to convince all of Duck fans, or at least give it my best effort, that Dylan Raiola committing to the University of Oregon is actually a big victory for the Ducks. Now that Raiola has officially announced that he is going to go to the University of Oregon, I think he actually fits into two timelines with the Ducks. And if you've seen the Marvel Cinematic Universe, you know how big of a deal that is. What I'm talking about here, in the video, I'm going to give you a breakdown of why I think Raiola could be a very good starter for this Oregon football team, especially with the type of talent that they have and the type of season that they are set up for. Because let's make no bones about it. This Oregon football team is going to be one of, if not the favorite, to win the national title this year. But Raiola fits on this other path, a path that, frankly, I didn't think he'd set himself up for. And that path, of course, is if Dante Moore decides to come back. He still has not made a decision at the time of the recording of this video. So if Dante Moore does come back, it sounds like Raiola is okay with using his red shirt and waiting a year. What do both of those paths look like? We're going to dive into that on today's video. But before we do, make sure that you hit that sub button. We are on the road to 3,000 subscribers. You can see right there. Closing in on 2,400. Shoot, I think we're going to blow past that number on this video. Come on in, hit that sub button. We've got you covered the minute that there is breaking news on the Oregon Ducks, whether it's breaking transfer portal news, recruiting news, or frankly, you just want to know what's going on with the Oregon football team during the 2026 offseason. Those are all great reasons to hit that sub button. Now, to the main entree. Dylan Raiola. All right, so mini Patrick Mahomes, fake Patrick Mahomes, Walmart Patrick Mahomes, insert Patrick Mahomes joke here, is actually a much better quarterback than I think most people realize because of the off-the-field antics, or the antics, frankly, in the preliminary to the game, in the pre-warm-ups, and the stuff that honestly just doesn't matter. Don't get me wrong. When I see Raiola running around doing the Patrick Mahomes stuff and then being like, what? I don't know what you're talking about. I don't even watch Patrick Mahomes. I do find it annoying. But we have to remember, it's not about who he is as a person necessarily. It's about who he is as a player. And he's a big, strong quarterback, over 6'3". While he does have a little bit of weight to him, so he can take a hit, he can still clearly move. When you look at his stats between his freshman year and his sophomore year, remember, that's a true freshman year, and I'd make the argument, a kid coming from Nebraska, that's a pretty darn good freshman year over there on the left. Just under 3,000 yards passing. Now, the interception number is too high. The touchdown number is too low. But you also have to remember that he had a Nebraska team that took an Ohio State team that ended up winning the national championship all the way down to the wire. And that's with, look, no offense, Nebraska fans, the team just isn't as talented as the Oregon Ducks. When you look at this season, he's well on pace to break that yardage number if he doesn't get hurt. His completion percentage jumped up 5 points. 5. That's incredible. You don't usually see that type of jump. And then the number that's always going to be more impressive to me than anything else is the turnover difference and how much that number has gone down. And frankly, I think if Raiola plays the entire season without getting hurt, he doesn't come anywhere near that 11 interception number, and the touchdown number continues to skyrocket. Why? Because Raiola was learning how to play college football. Raiola showed clear growth between his freshman year to his sophomore year. And what I will say is the most impressive thing to me about Dylan Raiola is the fact that he clearly took on some coaching. Because when you look at a player like Dylan Raiola, who has what we're going to claim is the mindset of Raiola, something that we've seen before, how often have we seen the 5-star braggadocious kid, I don't need to be coached, I don't need to listen to this, I don't need to listen to that, and they just do their own thing, right? They do whatever they want to do. And then they don't end up reaching their full potential. Well, Raiola, he clearly listened to Matt Rule and the rest of the offensive staff over there at Nebraska. He made smarter decisions with the football. He threw the ball into spots where his receivers could get it and no one else could. There were a lot of games this year that Nebraska was in, and I would call Nebraska a Tier 2 Big Ten team, that they would not have been in without Dylan Raiola. And I think that you can clearly tell what that team missed when Dylan Raiola was not able to finish the season with them. You now bring in Raiola into Oregon, where he's going to get better receivers than he's ever had. He might not necessarily have a better running back, although I'm going to claim that he'll have a better running back, but he's definitely going to have a deeper running back room than what he's ever had before. He's going to have better tight ends. I would make the argument that the offensive line is going to be on par at minimum, and he's going to probably have a better defense. That all bodes well for Dylan Raiola continuing to grow as a quarterback and getting better and better. We've seen transfer QB after transfer QB come in during the Dan Lanning era, and they all perform better than they ever had before. Bo Nix performed better, Dylan Gabriel performed better, and Dante Moore clearly performed better. So who's to say that Dylan Raiola coming to Oregon doesn't mean that he'll continue to improve and perform better? Drew Maringer's good OC, I believe. I believe in him to come in and be the next OC and be just as good as Will Stein. There was a big risk going from Kenny Dillingham to Will Stein. There's a big risk going from Will Stein to Drew Maringer, but I'll tell you right now, Dan Lanning has shown that he can do a really good job picking OCs that get the most out of his quarterbacks. Now, earlier on this week, Matt Zenitz did have this to say. He and Chris Hummer, they're great college football reporters. They went into their crystal ball predictions, and it was pretty clear that they were putting Oregon in favor to land Dylan Raiola. And I kind of said as much earlier on this week where I talked about, hey, there was a potential that Dylan Raiola could be over in Eugene. He was obviously visiting this weekend. And I found it interesting as well, this coming from Zenitz and Hummer. But as soon as Dylan Raiola entered the portal, we put a video out here on the channel because he was immediately linked to Oregon. And then you didn't hear a peep out of him. Now, you heard that Sam Levitt was going and doing different visits. You saw that DJ Lagway was going and doing different visits. Sorsby, the list goes on. But you know who never did another visit? Dylan Raiola. At least not one that I saw. And if I'm wrong on that, okay. But I didn't hear a peep out of Raiola. I didn't hear a peep out of Raiola's camp. There was talk of other people saying, well, maybe he ends up going to Louisville, but I didn't really see anything on that. So it's clear to me that Raiola has been targeting Oregon for quite some time, and Oregon has been targeting Raiola. That bodes well because that means that both sides equally want each other. And if Dylan Raiola were to come in and be the starting quarterback right away for the Oregon Ducks, I think that the Ducks would actually be in a pretty decent situation. But it also kind of sounds like Dante Moore might not necessarily be gone. Dante Moore has made it pretty clear that he has not made a decision. Now, he has to make a decision rather quickly. But if Dante Moore does decide to come back, there were rumors that, hey, maybe Dylan Raiola would be okay using his red shirt and sitting on the bench. And then this is what Chris Hummer had to say on it, right? I just talked to you about how well of a job he does with Matt Zenitz. He said sources view it as possible that Dylan Raiola could end up at Oregon even if Dante Moore passes on the NFL draft and returns to school. That means that Raiola would sit. Well, Raiola has his redshirt year available, so that would be something that he could use. And then he would basically do what Dante Moore did with Dylan Gabriel. Dante Moore was a starting quarterback at UCLA. He comes in and sits for a year, learns the system, learns some of his weaknesses that he can turn into strengths, and then pushes himself forward. Raiola would be willing to do that is what it kind of sounds like right now. And that's the best case scenario for me. Why would that be the best case scenario for Oregon? Well, because you have a team that's primed and ready to win right now. The Ducks next year are going to be one of, if not the main favorite for a national title, whether Dante Moore comes back or not. If Dante Moore comes back, I think you might be that number one team anyways. He's had a fantastic season this year, but I think we all saw it in that Peach Bowl that when the tough gets going, he's still not always ready for prime time. So there's still some growth that he can make, and an extra year of coming back would be, in my opinion, great for his development. I also understand why Dante Moore would go to the NFL draft. As bad as that game was, still think he's a top 10 pick. Minimum. I still think there's a world where he's a top 5 pick. Shoot, there's probably a world where he's still probably a top 3 pick. That's just how much talent Dante Moore has. And when you look at his entire year this year, I think we can really learn from the growth that he made at UCLA to the growth that he made at Oregon and how much more growth I think is still on the table. While he might be without his number one tight end, I think the interceptions are still a little bit of a problem for Dante Moore. While 10 interceptions isn't the end of the world, how many times did we see him trust his arm just a little bit too much? How many times did we see Dante Moore try to fit the ball into certain spots in big games against teams that have more NFL players than most, where he kind of turtled a little bit? And I know it's a little bit recency bias because I'm looking at the Indiana game in particular. I also wonder, after some of the conversation that he's had, if he feels like he has unfinished business. Well, if he's willing to come back, the Ducks have the best backup that they could possibly have in Dylan Raiola. I don't know that there's a better backup quarterback in all of college football, because heaven forbid, what if something does happen to Dante Moore? No offense to Luke Moga or Brock Thomas, two guys who have seen a lot of time this year for the Oregon Ducks. I guess I shouldn't say a lot of time. They've seen some time for the Oregon Ducks. I don't know that I would be comfortable giving them the keys to this Ferrari. Not yet. I think that they're both quality backups, and I think that as they get older and more mature, they'd have the opportunity to really step into that role, especially with how good this team is going to be. Well, now what you could do is it goes to Dylan Raiola if there is an injury. And if there isn't, great. Moga, Thomas, Achilles Smith Jr., who I didn't put on there because he hasn't seen time, but obviously he's a quarterback that's on the roster. They can all work together to push Dylan Raiola, just as Dylan Raiola can work with them to push them. But more importantly, what Dylan Raiola can do is become a veteran presence in that locker room. You now don't just have two QBs who have seen a lot of college football action. You would have instead of having one, you would have two. That is massive, massive when we're talking about dealing with crazy in-game situations, when bullets are flying. The Ducks are in a great spot because by Raiola committing to Oregon, you have your QB for next year no matter what. But more importantly, you might have your quarterback for 2027. Because if Raiola's willing to commit and Dante Moore decides to come back, that means that Raiola is here for the long haul. That means he's not going to be a one and done. And he can really learn from Dante Moore, and they can work together to push each other forward. The Ducks are in a great spot here when we were kind of looking at the Ducks, wondering and worried about what this roster could look like if Dante Moore didn't end up coming back, or if the Ducks would have the best roster, but not quite having the quarterback. Now, you don't have to rely so much on making sure that you land one of those other guys in the portal and having to overpay. I think it's freaking perfect, man, and I can't believe I'm saying this. I love that Dylan Raiola is going to be a Duck. What are your thoughts on the newest Oregon Duck? Let me know down below in the comment section. Are you excited that Raiola is here? Are you not excited that Raiola is here? And if you're not excited why Raiola is here, you better let me know with some MLA-cited sourcing. Don't just go in there and say, I hate Dylan Raiola. I need actual concrete evidence, or at least I need to see your thought process through that. Thank you guys again so much for viewing the video today. Make sure that you go on in and hit that sub button. You're going to get a ton of Oregon content throughout 2026 as we get ready to go into our next college football season. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and Go Ducks!